It's very important you fully prepare yourself for what you're about to see.
Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Not to be confused at all with the whimsical Brendan Fraser mummy adventure movies, nor Tom Cruise's ill-fated 2017 The Mummy, which failed to launch Universal's Monsterverse, nor even 1932's The Mummy starring Boris Karloff, aside from a few mystical elements. No, this is a different beast altogether, having far more in common with this than with any bandage-wrapped baddie to grace the big screen over the last century or so. It's perhaps unsurprising because Lee Cronin also directed Evil Dead Rise, which found a great deal of success at the box office, and his latest effort seems poised to do so as well, already earning 65 million US globally in 2 weeks on a budget of 22 million. I've been away on vacation for the last couple of weeks and haven't been keeping up on all the hubbub, so when I got back home, I jumped into this movie without even having seen a trailer, and whoa.
Don't worry, Grandma. It's fun to be dead.
This is one sick, twisted, depraved take on mummy lore, chock full of stomach-churning and awkwardly horrific scenes and turns, feeling at times more like The Exorcist or Evil Dead. If you're in the mood for plenty of squeamishly uncomfortable moments, along with some utter nastiness, this movie hits the spot. There's body horror galore, a hint of dark comedy, a lot of supernatural elements, and a surprisingly cool connection to the, let's call it, pseudo-Egyptology surrounding the whole thing. Yes, there's an archaeologist, there's Egypt, there is a mummy, but the thrust of the film boils down to a series of horrific events, plaguing a family at their home in New Mexico. As I said, this bears a striking resemblance to The Exorcist or Evil Dead Rise, along with elements from Cobweb and even The Conjuring for good measure. And yet, with all the shared DNA this movie possesses, I think it still manages to scratch out an identity of its own. But this might be the biggest sticking point for people. There are a lot of derivative elements from other horror properties, and very few of those have to do with mummies. Lee Cronin's The Conjuring might be a droll way to describe this film, but a lot of viewers just might see it that way, wondering why this movie even has the mummy title appended to it at all. And I get it. It's a fair criticism. Ultimately, though, if you're not too hung up on the dearth of mummy lore and the striking resemblance to Evil Dead Rise, there's still a solid framework here, and I think it still ends up feeling unique. Some might disagree with me, but I think it's its own creature, and succeeds in standing out among recent horror releases. The story, the broad strokes, I'll try not to spoil anything, is about the Cannon family and their eldest daughter Katie, who went missing in Cairo 8 years ago.
Hello? Mr. and Mrs. Cannon. I'm Deputy Chief at the U.S. Embassy. Your daughter Katie has been found.
After she turns up in a much disturbed condition, the Cannons do their best to nurse her back from her near catatonic state, while attempting to figure out just what happened to her. This being a horror movie, of course next to nothing goes smoothly, and the whole thing descends into an utter nightmare. The characters are pretty decent, each with their own angle. Charlie, Katie's father, played by Jack Rayner, takes a more investigative approach, determined to uncover the mystery of what happened to his daughter, who abducted her all those years ago, where she's been for that time, etc.
What happened to Katie? What really happened to her?
Whereas Larissa, Katie's mother, played by Leia Costa, is more emotionally minded, fixated on nursing Katie back to health and less concerned about the hows and whys of the past, though not at all adverse to playing the blame game. The family also consists of Katie's younger brother and a sister who wasn't even born when she went missing. These two factor into the film in a really interesting way, and help to bring more emotional resonance to the family setup. Katie's grandmother, a devout Christian who feels like someone from the old country, has some absolutely wild scenes as the movie progresses. Everyone in the family gets some screen time in varied and disturbing ways, though Katie and her parents are the main focus. And then there's a detective from the Missing Persons Division in Cairo, Dalia Zaki, played by May Kalamawi, who makes a welcome addition to the cast and essentially bridges the gap between the Egyptian aspects of the film and Katie and her family in New Mexico. She's a great character, and adds a nice investigatory aspect to the film, helping to round out the story from just a straight-up haunted house type of affair. Most of the actors are pretty decent, though there are a couple scenes early on in the film where some of the acting, or maybe it's the direction, feels too heavy-handed or a bit too intense when the scenes don't quite warrant it, which are punctuated with heavy sound effects or musical stings that feel like a bit much. I will say that Jack Rayner's acting feels the least convincing. His performance is uneven, and it's noticeable. The mother comes across as really annoying and wildly illogical, though that's the character she's portraying, I guess, so I can't fault her too much from an acting perspective. The youngest daughter can be a little inconsistent, but child actors can be uneven like that. She's not bad by any means, and as the film goes on, things with her also improve due to events in the story. The camera work really stands out in this. There are a lot of shots with the character in the very close foreground, with other characters looking on in shock or distress in the background, to sort of juxtapose the two without giving too much of the horror away. It seems to be a go-to of Lee Cronin's, and it works well. The story is pretty twisted, but it does retain some commonalities with older Mummy lore. Not a whole lot, but some of the supernatural elements and spells are somewhat similar in nature. But the horror elements are very different from those earlier Mummy movies, definitely leaning toward the gross, perverse, and the violation of innocence so common in possession movies like The Exorcist, of course. The horror is mainly derived from the level of discomfort it can make you feel, rather than things like jump scares. If you go into this expecting fleshed out Mummy lore with mentions of pharaohs and curses, you might be disappointed. The connection to Egypt and mummies is there, but the messed up horror and degradation of this family unit is clearly the focus. The shock value does a lot of heavy lifting. There are some believability issues, like in what world would Katie be declared fit for home treatment in the state she's in? Or why is a detective taking everything upon herself with zero backup? And some scenes are overplayed in an attempt to build up an unsettling atmosphere, but come across as over-exaggerated, when there's no need to be. Katie's gnarly ass already accomplishes the desired effect without her parents acting like fools. On that note, the makeup effects are disgusting and really effective. Katie looks like a hot mess, and it only gets worse as it goes on. There are a couple hokey scenes, and the very ending feels tacked on, like someone changed their mind late in the process, so as to not make things feel too bleak. But despite its flaws, I like this movie. Someone on IMDb wrote that it's the most fucked up mummy film to date, and I have to agree. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I found it entertaining, and thought it was better than a lot of other recent horror entries. I know this generally isn't getting favorable reviews, but it worked for me. I've got to be honest about that. Some people might think the horror elements are too derivative of other properties, but I think the story and the way the events are portrayed lend this thing its own feel and give it its own unique flavor. That, coupled with the strong camera work and memorably nasty visuals, make this a worthwhile watch, in my opinion. Just don't go in expecting too many scarabs and sandstorms.
She just needs our care and lots of love.